Faith stretches when I use what I have to get started. He said, go borrow vessels all over the neighborhood, put them in your living room, and take that little pot of oil, close the door because you're going to look like a ridiculous fool, and start pouring oil into those vessels. And you remember what happened? She filled every vessel in her home until she ran out of vessels and the oil stopped. The degree to which you stretch your faith is the degree to which God will pour. Now that really helps me to figure out why the Lord allows me to walk through situations and gives me things that are important to stretch. Here's a testimony of a guy down in Mobile, Alabama. Years ago, this man found out about a need in Kenya for a dormitory for pastors. I knew the missionary that wanted to build this dormitory. The cost of the dormitory in Nairobi was $150,000. Well, this guy in Mobile said, Lord, if you'll give me that money, I'll build that dormitory. He had an oil recycling business. And one day he was at the refinery in Mobile, and notice one of the main artery pipes of the refinery was dripping oil. Every few minutes, one little drip would come out. And he asked the guy he was with, why don't y'all fix that leak? They said, we would have to close half of this refinery for hours to fix that leak, and it's not worth it. It's just one little drop every few minutes. He said, can I have that leak? I said, sure. So he put a barrel under the leak, and every few minutes, one drop would come in that barrel. Well, he went back several weeks or a month or two later, and there the barrel was full. So he brought another barrel, replaced it, went and sold that oil, and over a period of months, sold enough oil to make $150,000 from a leaking pipe. He built that dormitory in Kenya. I've been in it. I've taught in it. From a leaking pipe in Mobile, Alabama. Let me tell you something. God has a leaky pipe for you. Do you believe that? Somewhere there's a source. And your faith attracts the resources to fulfill the need. Now, the second thing I'd like you to write down is that you stretch your faith with a dream. First thing is you stretch your faith with a need. Secondly, Father's house, you stretch your faith with a dream. We're sitting in a dream. This was a dream Pastor Fred and Cookie had. Probably before many of you were here. This was a dream. This 7 acres, that house, this building. We're sitting in here today worshiping the Lord. But a dream is something the Holy Spirit gives you that He wants to accomplish through you. Dr. Cho has that little tiny church over there in Seoul, Korea. And Cho was dying with Parkinson's disease. I've been on his board 20 years. I've been there probably 15 times. And we noticed his hands were trembling. He really, I didn't know if we were ever going to have another. He retired at 70. He was 72. In fact, he got so bad that they had him in the hospital and they called his family in. And in the hospital bed, the Holy Spirit spoke to Cho and said these words. He said, I can't speak to you anymore. And Cho asked the Holy Spirit, why not, Lord? He said, because I only speak the language of dreams and visions. And you're not receiving my dreams and visions for your life anymore. He asked the Lord to forgive him. And the Lord showed him He wanted him to plant 5,000 churches in Korea. He's already done that. And the Lord told him He was going to add 15 years to his life and He was going to heal him. Well, He did. He healed him. In fact, I got a little email from him in December. He was preaching in India to 1 million people on a field. Come on, somebody. But it happened because he lost his dream. Now, I don't know who you are in here. Maybe you kind of got to an age where you've circled the wagons and you're just holding on. But you can't do that. God has a dream that He wants to give you. He's got something that He wants to stretch your faith. One of my dearest friends in ministry for years was Dr. Lester Sumrall. Apostolic man of God. He came to Bethany probably 15 times. He said, the only reason I'm here is for you. He said, I want to impart something to you. And he did. I remember the day we sat at Ralph and Kaku's restaurant, and he began to cry at the table. I'd never seen Doc Sumrall cry. I said, Doc, can I help you with anything? He said, Larry, I was in Jerusalem last week. I saw a river of blood. And God spoke to me that his body needs food and clothing in Africa. He said, I found out about some Christians down in Africa that are refugees that don't have one stitch of clothing. They're hiding in the jungle because they don't have one piece of clothing. They're Christian people. And he said, I need to buy ships and planes and everything I can to get them food and clothing. Well, he was about 80 years old. Do you know Doc bought an ocean-going ship when he was about 80? I'm talking about a big one that crosses the whole ocean. He bought a C-130 plane. I think they're 10 or 15 million. I don't know how much they cost. He bought 6 television stations. He did, when he was in his 80s, I think 83, he crossed the ocean twice in economy class in 1 month. And Doc Sumrall said something to me. He said, Larry, fulfillment in life comes not from living in a house, but in building the house. He said, when you're building a house, you're excited to see the 2x4s and the rafters and the sheetrock and the shingles. Everything in you is excited, but when it's built and you get the recliner in and you lay back in there with a remote control, there's no fulfillment in that. I've thought about that often, Fred. How many pastors have lost their vision? Bartimaeus, Jesus said, what can I do for you? He said, Lord, I want my vision. If you lose your vision, you lose your dream, you'll never stretch your faith. Here's another testimony. I contacted Reinhard Bonnke several years back and said, Brother Bonnke, how much does one of those crusades in Africa cost? I thought it'd be about $80,000, $100,000 in the bush of Africa. He told me it was $1 million. Showed me the budget. About half of that was for literature for the new converts. I thought, Lord, even God doesn't have that much money. I mean, man, that's ridiculous. So I told the church jokingly of my dream to pay for one of those. I said, if one of you has $1 million in your pocket and you cough and it falls out, we'll send it to Brother Bonnke and pay for that crusade. Everybody laughed except one young man on the back row. He looked up to heaven and he said, God, give me that $1 million. I'll pay for that crusade. He worked for a financial institution. Not long after, they approached him about a project that was impossible to accomplish. A sales project, a goal, a sales goal. Impossible. But they said, if you'll accomplish this in the nation, we'll give you any bonus you want. He said, I want $1 million. They laughed. They said, well, first, you'll never accomplish it, but why do you want $1 million? He said, to pay for a Reinhard Bonnke crusade. So a year went by, and this young man came to me one day and said, Brother Larry, I got you $1 million. I said, what are you talking about? He said, remember a year ago when you said that about the Bonnke crusade? I've got the $1 million. Who do we make the check out to? And I brought that check. He didn't even receive the money in his name. I brought that check to Bonnke down in West Palm Beach in a house, and I handed that check to him. He about fainted. And you know, a bunch of us went to that crusade in Agoja, near where I was a missionary. In 5 nights, we saw 1.1 million people saved because of a bonus. 9 blind people healed in one night on Tuesday night because of a bonus. See, that young man's faith stretched and said, God, this is my dream. What is your dream? What are you really dreaming for God to do for the world? You know, I had a dream back in 2000 of planting churches. And Fred knows more about this, but in 11 years, we were able to plant 22,000 churches around the world. Still going. Planted 39 more this month. I'm telling you, if you'll dream, God will supply. The last thing, you stretch your faith with a seed. First, you stretch your faith with a need. Then you stretch your faith with a dream. And finally, you stretch your faith with a seed. Now, here's a good definition for a seed. A seed is your dream in capsule form.